Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Blessing. I want to thank you all for joining the presentation. February is Heart Health Month. So today's presentation is on estrogen, inflammation, and heart health. And we know that February is Heart Health Month. And today we're just going to touch on a couple of things that occur when women to our heart health when we enter perimenopause. Okay. So you're probably wondering who I am. My name is Dr. Blessing. I've been a nutritionist for over 14 years. I'm currently going through perimenopause, so I have a general idea of some of the symptoms and struggles that women have. And again, my goal is to educate women about perimenopause so they don't have to navigate it alone. I've met so many women in life, either their clients or friends or hairdressers, and they always mentioned that they never knew they were in perimenopause and they felt very isolated. So what I'm trying to do in my little part of the world is to educate women and just let you know that those symptoms that you're having, you're not crazy, they're there, they're real, and you don't have to navigate this process alone. So today we're going to talk about the five most common ways that perimenopause affects heart health. So that's increased heart disease risk, that is high blood pressure, increased cholesterol, and I'm forgetting the last two, increase insulin resistance and also increase unwanted weight gain. So my goal is to give you actionable strategies to help support your heart health during this transitional time called perimenopause. So at the end of the session, I'll share how you can take the next step with personalized support through a Beyond Perimenopause Blueprint call. So the first one is increased heart disease risk. And one thing I've noticed is that most women aren't aware of the link between what happens to your heart while you're in perimenopause and how that affects your overall health. So we're going to start with some stats. So heart disease is the #1 killer of women. It it causes 1 in 3 female deaths, and that's more than all of cancer deaths combined. So 33% of women are going to die or may die of heart disease. The shocking thing that I didn't know is that your risk of heart disease actually increases 3 to 5 times during and after perimenopause. So if you've been on any of my other presentations before, you know that I say, and I'll repeat it over and over, that estrogen affects everything. Estrogen is our anti-inflammatory hormone, and once the levels of estrogen start to decrease during perimenopause, we lose that protective effect. And so if you know anything about inflammation, is that it doesn't just stay in one part of the body. It affects all of the body, and it definitely affects our cardiovascular system. So heart disease and estrogen. And as I mentioned before, estrogen has a very protective effect on blood vessels and our cholesterol levels. Estrogen is important for regulating how much of the good cholesterol we have and decreasing how much of the bad LDL cholesterol that our body produces. And so what happens is, again, during perimenopause, we have fluctuations in with our estrogen and progesterone. But as those levels start to fluctuate, what will happen is, because estrogen is the anti-inflammatory hormone and has so many beneficial effects on the heart and the cardiovascular system, when those levels start to fluctuate during perimenopause, we have an increased risk of high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and increased stiffening of the arteries. Because believe it or not, estrogen is needed to help keep our blood vessels flexible so that we don't have high blood pressure and we don't end up developing high cholesterol. Okay, wait a second. And so some nutrition and lifestyle tips to help prevent heart disease during perimenopause include increasing omega-3s. So the big thing for increasing omega-3s, that's whether you're taking a good supplement or if you're eating fatty fish, or you're eating walnuts because there are plant-based sources of omega-3s, anything to help support your body now that your estrogen levels are, because so during perimenopause, your estrogen levels are fluctuating and you're losing that anti-inflammatory effect. So in order to be able to support your heart, your body, your brain, your entire body during perimenopause, as those estrogen levels are fluctuating and will eventually decrease in menopause, we have to find a way to decrease the inflammation. And so that's by eating omega-3 fatty acid rich foods, taking a good omega-3 supplement. Again, the biggest thing is to decrease inflammation, making sure you balance your blood sugar. And that means eating more fiber, more soluble fiber, resistant starches, anything that will help balance your blood sugar. Because when you have unbalanced blood sugars, you become more insulin resistant, and that actually increases inflammation. So we want to do everything that we can, especially with nutrition, to help support our body and our heart because we're losing the anti-inflammatory and the protective effect of estrogen. And so some lifestyle things you can do, and you're going to see these repeated, are to make sure you're getting quality sleep, make sure that you're strength training, and make sure that you're walking and managing your stress. So last week I went in and had a follow-up checkup. And one thing she told me was the best way to balance your blood sugar is to make sure you go like 10 minutes after eating a meal to go for a 10 to 20-minute walk. She said that is the best thing that she's seen. And it's just a great way to help flush the sugars from the food that you're eating. So flushing it into the muscles where the muscles can burn it instead of sitting in your blood vessels where it is inflammatory and can cause a lot of damage. So the next thing is high blood pressure. So women in perimenopause have a 40% higher risk of developing high blood pressure. And again, this is due to those lovely fluctuating levels of estrogen. So estrogen, it helps keep the blood vessels flexible by producing nitrous oxide. This relaxes and it dilates the blood vessels, and dilating the blood vessels means it just widens it so the blood can flow quicker as your heart is pumping. But as those estrogen levels are decreasing, what will happen is the estrogen isn't there to promote the production of nitric oxide. And when that happens, your blood vessels become more stiff. So they don't dilate as much. And the smaller the diameter of your blood vessels, right? The wider the blood vessel is, the better it is for you because those blood vessels are relaxed. Your heart is pumping blood to the organs and where it needs to go. But when you lose that protective effect of estrogen, what will happen is the blood vessels will be a little bit smaller, and that'll make it's not harder for the blood to go through, but it increases your blood pressure. And it's good when your blood vessels are more flexible. So let's say if you go from a walk to a run, right? The body has to adapt. But if you're not able to adapt, if your blood vessels aren't able to dilate when you go from a walk to a run, what'll happen is that increases your blood pressure. So the smaller the diameter of the blood vessel, the more likely you're going to have higher blood pressure. Oops, let's see. Did it freeze? Uh-oh. Okay, let's go back. Okay, and did you know that when estrogen helps manage and regulate sodium balance in the body, and when estrogen levels start to decrease, what happens is you become more sensitive to the salt that you eat in food. A lot of women will tell me, well, I used to eat this way when I was younger before perimenopause and menopause, and it didn't bother me. Well, the thing about perimenopause is your body is going through this tumultuous transition. And again, we're losing that protective effect of estrogen. What is happening is we're becoming more sensitive to things that we weren't sensitive to before. And in this case, when you're so sensitive to sodium and salt, this can too increase your blood pressure. So if you've ever gone to your primary care physician, or if you had to go to a cardiologist, this is why they tell you to be careful with the amount of salt you're eating and to watch out about how much you're eating because of this. Because since we are more sensitive to food with salt in it or salt, what will happen is it doesn't take that big of amount. And so this is, of course, unique for each woman. Every woman's body is different. Every woman's tolerance is very different. But you become sensitive to salt that enters the body, and usually that's through food. So here are some nutrition and lifestyle tips to help you lower your blood pressure. So nutrition tips, increase potassium-rich foods. So potassium is that other mineral that helps balance out sodium. So if you've eaten a lot of sodium, try not to, but adding potassium is good for the heart. It helps with the heart's conductivity, helps it pump and beat. And so when you add more potassium-rich foods, this kind of offsets the balance of that, the salt and the sodium that the body is more sensitive to. Also mentioned is cutting out or reducing processed and high sodium foods, because now that you're more sensitive to these foods, or more sensitive to salt because we're losing that protective effect of estrogen, it's important to really just pay attention to really how you feel after you eat some of these foods. You know, you may have been able to eat, I don't know, a salty food, chips, right? But now you notice that, hey, after I eat these chips, I feel more bloated or I feel weird. Just pay attention to things like that. I would say track it and then just cut them out or reduce them. Or if you're cooking, I would say use others, herbs, and spices to flavor your food instead of adding a lot of salt. Okay, also balancing your blood sugar, adding magnesium-rich foods. So magnesium is the not hormone, the stress mineral. And so most of us are running around stress. But what magnesium does is it helps relax the muscle. So it relaxes smooth muscle, and the blood vessels are made of smooth muscle. So what it does is if you're eating magnesium-rich foods and taking a good magnesium supplement, what is happening is you're going to get the same effect as the estrogen, relaxing and dilating, increasing the area that blood is going through. So that, and then also staying hydrated. When you stay hydrated, you flush out it helps your body flush out that extra salt. So lifestyle tips, strength train 2 to 3 times a week. Again, I always say start somewhere. I talked about the daily walking, especially after eating a meal. That just helps you maintain and balance your blood sugar levels. Again, cutting out chronic stress, because we know that when we are stressed out, fight or flight is turned on. And when fight or flight is turned on, our blood pressure increases because the body doesn't know. The body thinks that we're trying to run from a threat. And when you're trying to run from a threat, what happens is it needs to increase your blood pressure so it can send that extra blood to the muscles and the brain. Improve your sleep quality. This is basically creating an evening or a sleep routine that helps your body kind of know that, hey, it's time to wind down. And then monitoring your blood pressure. So this is very important, whether you have high blood pressure or not. A lot of times women don't know, or they don't pay attention, and they think, oh, my blood pressure was just high because it was a stressful time in my life. And they don't realize that it's getting progressively higher. So high cholesterol. So this is kind of what I was talking about when I was talking about the diameter of the blood vessel. So this is a normal blood vessel. You see that it's wide enough. All the blood cells, the red blood cells, are going through this blood vessel here. So here's when there's the atherosclerotic plaques, which is when you have a lot of cholesterol in your blood, high triglycerides, and also goodness, I'm forgetting it. I'll get to it. But this is what happens when you have those plaques of the triglycerides and cholesterol building up in the blood vessel. So you see that the blood vessel here is narrow. right? It's narrower because you have this plaque here. So what happens is there's going to be increased blood pressure here because it doesn't have enough room like here, where it's dilated, it's wide, the blood vessels can get through. And so this is severe atherosclerosis where you see that the blood vessel, the plaque is getting bigger and it's even harder for these blood cells to go through. And of course, stroke, that's kind of what happens, or some people will have blood clots depending on um, some other factors. So cholesterol levels shift dramatically during perimenopause. And this, again, is because estrogen controls the good cholesterol, which is the HDL, and it keeps the LDL, the bad cholesterol, which is the cholesterol that's more likely to collect in those little plaques in the blood vessel. It keeps those low. So once estrogen levels start to decrease during perimenopause, unfortunately, the uh, production of the good cholesterol, HDL, decreases, and then the bad cholesterol actually increases, which increases your risk of developing those atherosclerotic plaques of cholesterol within the blood vessel. So, unfortunately, perimenopausal women experience a 10 to 15% increase in the bad cholesterol. And this means they have a higher risk of developing high blood pressure just due to losing the protective properties of estrogen. So these changes contribute to plaque buildup in the arteries. And that was that kind of fatty atherosclerotic thing that I was showing you. Oops. So we know that estrogen regulates our cholesterol levels. It increases the good cholesterol, lowers the quote unquote bad cholesterol. It reduces levels of triglycerides, and it helps keep our arteries flexible. And our arteries are the blood vessels that are very high pressure, and those pump blood to the heart and also to the body. So some quick nutrition and lifestyle tips to help lower cholesterol during perimenopause are to eat more soluble fiber. So soluble fiber actually attaches to the LDL and the high triglycerides that are found in those plaques, and it helps flush it out of the system. So the more soluble fiber you eat, the better. So soluble fiber is found in foods like apples, bananas, fruits. Make sure you're eating healthy fats. Again, when we are in perimenopause, we are in a more inflammatory state because we are gradually losing the protective anti-inflammatory effects of estrogen. And then last but not least, limiting processed carbohydrates and added sugars. Okay, some lifestyle tips. It's important to exercise regularly. Again, this helps us it helps us balance our blood sugar levels. It also helps protect our heart. We need to prioritize sleep and stress management. Sleep is important. It's been shown that if just having a few bad nights of sleep will actually increase your blood sugar level, not blood sugar, your blood pressure levels, because again, fight or flight is on. So if you're not getting proper rest, you're in a stressed state. And the stress state is where the body is trying to help you get away from a threat. And then last but not least, we need to maintain a healthy weight and a waist circumference. And this is why it's important to make sure that we're not eating as many of those refined carbs, and we're making sure that we're getting that soluble fiber. Okay, so we're in the middle and we're going to take a break. I'm going to not a break, but I'm going to check the chat and see if there's any questions, and then we'll continue with the other two. I did put the heart health quiz link. Wait a second. I don't know what this is. I did put the heart health quiz link in earlier, but I can get those to you. Let me check the chat. Please stop share. Okay. Is there some questions? Okay. Okay, so let me go through. I'm going to go through all of the chat and answer any questions. So if you have additional questions, you can pop them in. And then after I go through the questions that are currently in the chat, I'll pop in if you want to take either of the quizzes, I'll put the links in there and you can do that. And then we'll discuss the heart health quiz answers at the end. And I'll address any other questions after that. Okay. So Jessica, I didn't either. I was, and so Jessica said, never knew estrogen affects cholesterol. Yes, I didn't either. I was taking a class that an MD, a medical doctor, was hosting about perimenopausal women's health because I was like, I need to learn a little bit more about this for myself. And the first thing he said, because a lot of times people will say there's no blood test for perimenopause, right? Which is true. And then I mean, it's a yes and no. So there are some markers that let you know that you're in perimenopause. And one of those is if your cholesterol is gradually going up. And so in my case, that was the issue. I also had other symptoms of perimenopause, the hot flashes, all of that. But my cholesterol just went up out of the blue. And so that is one of the signs of knowing that you're in perimenopause. Okay, so Lorizelle said, can you share a good magnesium supplement? So there are quite a few. So I take the Natural Calm. They have a magnesium glycinate. Thorne, Thorne is a supplement company, and they have a powdered one. And so initially, before when I started perimenopause, because I've been in it for 3 years now, I would take the Thorne magnesium powder and I would add it into I would add it in water when I wasn't able to sleep due to hot flashes. And so it worked wonderfully. But there you can take and it depends on what you need it for. So some people can take the Natural Calm, the magnesium citrate. It's not really meant for that, but it can still help you sleep. So I'll actually get a little list and I'll write that out for you if that'll work. I think that'll make it a little bit easier. Let's see. Yes, it is good stuff, Jessica. Okay. Other ways to get more potassium other than bananas. Yes, there are other fruits and vegetables that have potassium in them. What I'll do is I have a little checklist that I didn't get to put into the presentation because I was trying to make it very simple. And what I'll do is I'll have a little list of good potassium-rich foods because there are in other foods other than bananas. So I will get that to you. Okay, so Rati says, "Hi everyone, I'm researching how to deal with all my crazy symptoms. So many that are annoying are so frustrating and annoying to deal with. Anyone dealing with itchy armpit, cystic acne, and I feel like my sense of smell has changed. I find everything so intense now." Yes, these are all symptoms of perimenopause. And the why so a lot of people will say, why are they so many symptoms? Estrogen affects everything, your brain, right? So some women will have rage, some women will have increased anxiety, some people will have panic attacks just out of the blue. And you know what? Because estrogen is responsible for producing the hormones serotonin, dopamine, all of these, they're actually neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters that affect mood. And so the wide variety of symptoms is due to the wide variety of effects that estrogen has in every system from head to toe. That's it. So yes, the symptoms that you're struggling with right now are perimenopausal symptoms. Okay. And so this is Allie. During perimenopause, can it affect iron and vitamin D as well? So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you're asking there. Okay, so Ali also asked, so if you can clarify, I can answer that question a little better, but I'm not sure what you're asking. But you asked another question. you said, can you take a hormone test to see if you're in perimenopause? So again, like I was saying, yes or no. So during perimenopause, your estrogen levels are not totally gone. They're fluctuating. So they're going up and down, along with progesterone and testosterone. So they're not depleted until you're in menopause. So if you're in menopause, you can take a hormone test and you will not be producing any more estradiol, which is the form of estrogen. There are three forms, but that is the form of estrogen that gives us all these protective effects. So you can take one, but again, because because the estrogen and progesterone levels are fluctuating, they haven't decreased until you're in menopause. It 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 depends. So I think it's better to look at indicators. So like if you suddenly have really high cholesterol, or if you suddenly have um high blood pressure out of nowhere, you can't sleep, you're having hot flashes, or you're having some of the symptoms that Rati kind of mentioned before. There's a whole bunch of them, so it doesn't have to be the same. But during perimenopause, they're fluctuating. So it changes day to day, and it may not be as accurate. If that, let me know if that helps, Allie. Okay. Are there any ways to prevent symptoms of perimenopause? This is Isabella's question. Are there any ways to prevent symptoms of perimenopause? No. You can support your body with nutrition and lifestyle changes, right? Because your body's perimenopause is just a transition. And you can also talk with your doctor and you can do hormone therapy. You can do either the bioidentical hormone therapy, which is bioidentical hormones or hormones from plants, and they're identical to the hormones that our body produces, or you can do the conventional one. The conventional hormone therapy, I think it's the estrogen from horse urine. So it's not quite the same, but that's really the only way. You can't prevent it. You can support your body through perimenopause. Some women, their symptoms go away when they start hormone replacement therapy, but that's not everyone. Again, each woman's body is unique. We respond to things very differently, and um, there's no way to prevent it, but you can support it. And some women, when they do hormone replacement therapy, it can go away. So you can manage it. Thanks, Vanessa. Vanessa said mangoes have lots of potassium. Okay, so Elise, are there any teas you can suggest? I honestly sleep too much with my thyroid. I just ordered a treadmill because I don't walk at all. A tea would be easy for me. So, you can try chamomile tea. But I would say because you know that you have issues with your thyroid, perimenopause can aggravate thyroid issues. I would say to make sure you're staying in close contact with whoever your primary care or your hormone specialist is, and let them know that you're having these symptoms, and they can either help you get started with hormone replacement therapy, or they can tweak your thyroid medication. But I would say to stay in contact with them because they know you, they know your history, and they should be familiar with thyroid issues aggravated by perimenopause. And the treadmill is great. You don't have to walk outside. Walking outside just gives you that kind of calming effect, depending on where you live. But walk as much as you can, get that movement in. That helps protect heart health. And as I mentioned, it helps balance those blood sugar levels. So I would say the chamomile tea, valerian tea, those are two good ones. And I can also do a little research afterwards. For me personally, I don't like hot things, especially if it's hot. I only drink hot drinks when it's cold outside. So I don't really drink the teas. I just go for the magnesium. But I can get you a list of teas that you can check out and try. But definitely chamomile and valerian. Okay. So Allie said, would a hormonal IUD help lessen your symptoms of perimenopause? So if you mean by a hormonal IUD, you mean birth control. That's what I'm assuming. So The hormones and hormone replacement therapy are at lower but therapeutic levels. Birth control, I think it has a higher level of what do they call it? It's not, I want to say artificial progesterone. So you have to be careful with that. People use it as a form of hormone replacement therapy, but it's not as effective as actually going and getting hormone replacement therapy, right? Because replacement therapy is tailored specifically to balancing the estrogen and the progesterone that are fluctuating during perimenopause. Whereas birth control, the issue there is to stop you from, I'm assuming, ovulating. So I can do some research into that and get back to you. I have a friend that's an expert on this and talks about this all the time. So I can do that and I can find some peer-reviewed articles and send them your way. But I think there is a significant difference. The hormone replacement therapy is more efficient and more therapeutic than just using birth control. Even though people prescribe it and people use it, um, I've just heard MDs say that's the lazy way to treat it. So I don't know. What I'll do is I'll get you those articles that talk about it. Hormone replacement therapy, whether you go the bioidentical route or the conventional route, is the best way to treat perimenopause, right? Birth control is for something else. Perimenopause is perimenopause. But I'll do that. I can do that research and get that to you. Okay, so you have the same question about during perimenopause, can it affect iron and vitamin D? So I'm just going to answer it the best that I can. So during perimenopause, some women have very heavy cycles, right? So if your cycle is very heavy, and when I say heavy, I mean heavy. Like some people say that they have to be changing their pads like every hour. So it's heavy, not just, what we typically think. But if you have heavier and heavier cycles, yes, that's going to affect your iron. So you would need to, again, follow up with your healthcare provider, whoever that is, and they'll probably have you supplement with iron. And then vitamin D. So perimenopause, during perimenopause, estrogen also has a very important effect on the immune system, right? So during perimenopause, one of the supplements I recommend is to up your vitamin D. First, check if you're deficient, and then if you're deficient, start taking a vitamin D supplement. I hope that answered your question. Okay. Okay, great. Ashanti gave a whole list of fruits rich in potassium besides bananas. So I would check out what she's put here. Ashanti, thanks for sharing that. I couldn't add that all in the presentation and get it done before midnight. I just had to cut things out. So thank you so much for sharing that. Okay. Okay. And Cassie said that yoni steaming helped her with her heavy periods. I haven't had, like, for me, that's not one of my symptoms, so I don't know, but that's something that Cassie has tried, and she said that has helped. So if anyone is looking to try something, you can try the yoni steaming. I have not tried it, so I don't know, and my periods haven't gotten heavier, so I don't. It's not a symptom that I am struggling with. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is if there are any other questions, y'all can add them. I know that some of you took the heart health quiz. I'm not sure who all took it. At the end, I'm going to add the link in here. At the end, it's just like true or false, and it's like 8 or 10 questions. I'll go over the actual answers at the end. So let's put this here. Um, heart health quiz. Okay, let me know if y'all can access it. And then also have a perimenopause quiz. Or Are you thriving or surviving? I think it's like 6 questions, and it'll just let you know where you are with perimenopause. If you're struggling, surviving, or thriving, and you could just take it if you want to. If you don't, that is fine. Okay. See if this works. Okay, So if there are no questions for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, oh yes, with anything, Cassie, great. With anything, I always say, this is why I'm mentioning see your healthcare provider. You always need to have a healthcare provider, someone that knows your medical history inside and out. Someone can coach you, but it's not the same relationship that you have with someone who's your healthcare provider. So I always suggest do that because when I coach, I only focus on nutrition and lifestyle. If you're taking or starting bioidentical or conventional hormone therapy, they need to tweak it. So you don't just get one dose. They test it, right? They test the doses. So for example, last week I went in to see a doctor and I've been having really horrible brain fog, just forgetting things all the time, which is not normal. And so she gave me a prescription for a bioidentical hormone after taking a full and complete history, after looking at my blood work, and it's at the lowest dose. So I started it yesterday, right? So I'm going to continue. If I start seeing any results or having any side effects, I always track regardless. That's how I found out I was in perimenopause anyway, because I track all of my symptoms. And I was like, these things are hot flashes. So, um, so I'm tracking to see if I have any adverse side effects because some people think, oh, I could just track, and I know I'm in perimenopause, but they forget you need to track anytime you take any type of medication. I don't care if it's bioidentical. I don't care if you need to track. Anytime you start any type of medication or protocol for your health and well-being, you need to track because if you have a side effect and someone says, you're like, hey, you go to your doctor, you're like, I'm having this side effect. And they're like, no, that's not a common side effect. It can't be. You need to be able to know that, yes, it is a side effect. So you can either get off of it or you just need to be able to advocate for yourself. Okay. So I'm going to continue with the presentation. Let's go back. Again, let me know if you have any questions and I'll answer those at the end. Okay. So, um, I mentioned insulin resistance. And so I know when I talk about insulin resistance with some of my clients, sometimes they're like, I don't understand what's going on. I was able to eat this way before, but now I can't eat that same way. So insulin is a key, right? And so I was glad I found this little graphic because it makes it a little bit easier, at least for me. So here's the cell, and this is just one of the cells in your body. And then this is a door, right? The door is closed here. This is insulin. So insulin is a hormone that's produced by the pancreas. And anytime we eat, the food that we eat is broken down into glucose. So this is a little glucose molecule. This is the red blood cell. So because this is occurring in the blood vessel, this is all in the blood vessel. And what happens is you eat food, glucose is released, it's sitting there in the blood vessel. Well, it shouldn't be, but when your insulin is working well, when you're insulin sensitive, insulin will open the little door and the glucose will go in. And so glucose is energy for the cell, right? Glucose is energy for the cell, and you need insulin to open the door so the glucose can go into the cell. So what happens when you're insulin resistant is insulin is produced at higher and higher and higher levels, but the cell is not responding. The cell is not allowing the insulin to open the door. And then the glucose starts attaching to the blood cells because it's staying in the blood vessel. And this is so when you go to your primary care doctor, whoever your primary care provider is, when they test your it's A1C, they're testing the amount of glucose that is attaching to your red blood cells. Now, if you are insulin sensitive, that's not going to happen because the glucose is going to be going into your cell. It's not going to be sitting around in your blood vessel causing inflammation and other damage, right? It's going to be going into the cell. But when you're insulin resistant, the glucose cannot go into the cell because insulin cannot open the key is not working. And so that is what causes a lot of the symptoms that people who are either diabetic, if you're not diabetic, pre-diabetic, or in metabolic syndrome. What will happen is people will have fatigue, and that fatigue is because you're not getting energy into your cells. And then in addition to that fatigue, you're having inflammation. And remember that our blood vessels also go to our brain. So this is kind of how I was saying nothing is done in isolation. If you have inflammation in one place, you're going to have it everywhere else too. Okay. So this is important because unfortunately, insulin resistance increases by 25 to 30% during perimenopause. And this is what makes women gain that unwanted weight. It increases blood sugar imbalances, which leads to insulin resistance, but usually it hits like metabolic syndrome first. So when you have metabolic syndrome, you have high blood pressure, you have increased fats in your blood, and then you have increased triglycerides, and then you have um, the blood sugar imbalances. And then if that goes on long enough, it will become full-blown diabetes. And so the thing about insulin resistance is that it can be reversed. So estrogen, estrogen and insulin resistance. So what estrogen does, in addition to the thousands of other things that it does, is it actually improves our insulin sensitivity. And this is why, because during perimenopause, those estrogen levels are fluctuating. They're not stable like they were before we entered perimenopause. And so as it decreases, our insulin resistance increases and the insulin sensitivity decreases. Estrogen is responsible for reducing inflammation because it's an anti-inflammatory hormone. It acts as an anti-inflammatory hormone. And estrogen actually helps regulate fat storage. So a lot of that fat the abdominal fat that women get in during perimenopause is because estrogen levels are decreasing and now the body is regulating and moving fat around, right? So, and unfortunately, the abdominal fat is the most harmful and the most inflammatory. And this is why I keep mentioning reduce inflammation, reduce inflammation, reduce inflammation. Because if you have a lot of abdominal fat and you just leave it there, that is adding to the inflammation, right? In addition to adding to the inflammation, it's also adding to you being more insulin resistant. And that can also, if you have enough, it can actually press on some of your smaller blood vessels and increase your blood pressure. So this is why it's very important to just understand what's going on and understand, hey, why do I need to walk after I eat a meal? Why is insulin sensitivity important? Why do I need to reduce inflammation? Why does it matter? These are some of the reasons why it matters. So here are some nutrition and lifestyle tips to help prevent insulin resistance. And it's prevent or reverse because it can be reversed. So prioritize protein and fiber. So as women enter perimenopause, it is important to eat more protein, right? We need to be on top of that protein game so that we can help balance our blood sugar, and it actually also helps us protect our lean muscle mass. So there is a transition between perimenopause and menopause where the lean muscle mass decreases rapidly. So if you have not been eating enough protein, because you need to eat enough protein to provide the building blocks to build the muscle, right? If you're not eating enough, you're not going to be building the muscle. And when that drop happens, you're going to be left with whatever you built or decided not to build. So this is why it's important to add that strength training. Lean muscle mass is metabolically active. It helps burn calories. So not only that, it helps protect you from injury, especially when you enter perimenopause. It also helps to protect your bones because another thing people overlook is estrogen is very protective of the bones. And so as estrogen levels decrease, we got to up that protein because it helps protect and maintain our lean muscle mass. It also helps protect our bones so we don't have brittle bones or osteoporosis. So this is why it's important to strength train as much as you can and make sure you're eating as much protein as you can. Also, that fiber, especially that soluble fiber, that is there to help you balance the blood sugar levels. And once your blood sugar levels are balanced, you should have less inflammation. And then the fiber actually helps, like I mentioned before, it'll, especially if you're eating soluble fiber, it'll help get those extra fatty acids and LDL out of your system. So again, mentioned before, limit refined carbs and sugar, because if you're eating excessive refined calories, what happens is if you don't burn them, they're going to convert to fat, just plain and simple. So this doesn't mean don't eat any. It means to just limit it. Or if you're going to, because I'm not one to be restrictive. So what I'll do is if I decide I'm going to have a muffin or a donut, I'll make sure that I've had a breakfast with at least 40 to 50 grams of protein and fiber, and then I'll have that little donut as a snack before lunch. But I make sure that I get my protein and my fiber in first. When I was younger, I could just eat that donut and I was fine. But now I have to be a little bit more cautious because my body and everyone's body is going through a transition where it needs different nutrients, it needs different care. And so if you want to be able to navigate perimenopause successfully and also be healthy in menopause, because remember, this is not it, right? You have to make some tweaks to make sure that you're supporting your body and you're doing what you can to support your health. So when you get to menopause and beyond, your body is able to handle those changes. Also, eating balanced meals, again, that's making sure you're making sure your meals have enough of the protein, fiber, and healthy fats. And those healthy fats are to help tone down the inflammation. So, lifestyle tips, strength train. And again, I just talked about the benefits of building lean muscle mass. And again, I'm going to touch on this again because a lot of women will be like, oh, I'm going to go strength train, but they're not eating enough. So, a lot of times when you're trying to build muscle, you have to eat a little more. Again, the thing is making sure that it's protein heavy and fiber heavy. But that's something if you're trying to build, what you eat, what the amount of protein or how your meals are set up when you're building muscle is not the same as when you maintain. Just so you know, because a lot of women I coach are like, hey, but why do I have to eat more? You have to be able to provide more of those building blocks when you're building, actually in the building stage of building muscle. Again, prioritizing sleep. We know that if you lose 1 to 2 nights of sleep, this actually makes your blood sugar go up because it affects the other hormones. So we have appetite hormones, leptin and ghrelin. And so when you're not getting enough sleep, those hormones start going haywire and your blood sugar levels are not regulated. And then it also increases your blood pressure because not getting enough sleep tells your brain, I am in a fight or flight state. And so prioritize sleep, whether it's a evening routine, whether you're drinking valerian tea, whether you're taking a magnesium supplement, whether you have anxiety and you need to take magnesium biglycinate. Do what you need to do to prioritize that sleep. And of course, managing stress. So last but not least, what we all dislike, that unwanted perimenopause weight gain. So here are some stats. So just gaining 5 to 10% of your body weight during perimenopause increases your risk of cardiovascular disease because it raises your blood pressure, it increases levels of LDL cholesterol, and it makes you more insulin resistant. And we know that all of these things are contribute to poor heart health. Women who gain more than 10 pounds during perimenopause have a 20 to 30% higher risk of developing heart disease compared to the women that maintain their weight. And this is because of that visceral fat, which I was saying raises inflammation and then makes it hard for you to balance your blood sugar. So this should actually say nutrition and lifestyle tips to help prevent or reverse perimenopausal weight gain. I missed that. So again, biggest thing, prioritize protein. Aim for 25 to 30 grams of protein for every meal to help maintain muscle mass, stabilize blood sugar, and reduce sugar cravings. And notice this is to maintain muscle. So if you're trying to build muscle, depending on your body weight, There's a little calculation that they have. You type in your I think it's your height, your weight, and something else, and it tells you how much protein you need to maintain maintain muscle, build muscle, and lose weight. I don't have that on me. I can find it and send that to y'all by email, or if someone can find that um, equation, that would be great. If not, I can also go through my notes and pull it out for and send it to y'all by email. Again, I had to shorten this presentation so we wouldn't be here all night. Okay, so lifestyle tips, manage stress. Chronic stress raises cortisol, which is the fight or flight hormone. When you don't sleep well, cortisol is high. And then when you're in that in a state of chronic stress, this leads to belly fat storage, right? So that abdominal fat that comes with perimenopause that none of us like, and if we don't address, will increase our risk of developing cardiovascular disease. Practice breath work. I mentioned taking walks after eating a meal, just even taking walks if you're very stressed. I had a client and she had a very stressful job, and she was a mom. She had 4 to 5 kids, and there was always something that was stressing her out. And so I had her take walks with her 2 youngest children, and eventually she's made it a routine. Anytime she's stressed or has anxiety, she'll walk around the neighborhood. I think she has a local gym too, but just anything that can turn off fight or flight, which is when your cortisol is high, and then turn on rest and digest. And deep breathing is a cheap, free way for you to decrease your stress levels. You can do it while you're sitting at work. You could do it anywhere, right? Um, and then practicing mindfulness to help regulate your stress so you don't those cortisol levels aren't increasing. Okay, so you don't have to navigate perimenopause alone. The challenges that we face during perimenopause are real, so you're not losing your mind. There are hundreds of different symptoms, but today can be your first day, your first step towards feeling like yourself again. So if you're interested you in diving deeper and getting a personalized plan, you can book a perimenopause clarity and confidence call. And together I'll help you create just a plan to, so what it is, it's a 2-part call. I'll talk with you, get a little bit of where you are. From there, I create a personalized plan and blueprint from what you've told me. I'll sit and listen and figure out like where you are and figure out the top goals that you have. And then during the second call, what I'll do is I'll have that little blueprint for you. And then once that blueprint is done, you can do whatever you want. You can continue with something else if you want, but that blueprint will be yours. So what I'm going to do now is check the questions again, and then I'm going to find that link and put it in the chat. If you're interested, great. If you're not interested, there is no pressure. So let me find that link. Okay. Okay. So let's put it in here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up. Okay. So if there's anything that you've learned from this presentation and you would like to give me just a mini recommendation or a mini testimonial for this workshop, I would definitely appreciate it. Um, just did you learn anything new? Um, what were your takeaways? And I'll just use it to promote further workshops that I give. Okay, so Catherine said best explanation of how insulin works. Yolanda says I think that's fasting since November, and I noticed an increase in energy and no inflammation, but now I lost too much weight. How do I maintain my weight? So intermittent fasting is a great way. It works for some people and it may not work for others, but it's been working for Yolanda. Um, In regards to, you said no inflammation, but you've lost too much weight. I would just say, again, just adding that protein. I don't know if your intention of doing the intermittent fasting was to lose weight or if it was just to increase energy. So either way, like if it was to lose weight, I don't know because it's not clear, but if it was to lose weight, the if you stop intermittent fasting or if there's a stressful time in your life, you may not be able to fast as much. So I would still say to focus on that protein, the soluble fiber, because even if you don't put on weight, you can still have inflammation in your body just due to the fact that your estrogen levels are fluctuating, going up and down. So all women who are in perimenopause do not gain weight. Everyone doesn't gain weight. Some women don't gain weight, but they'll have debilitating hot flashes or debilitating anxiety. So again, like I was saying, each woman is unique. Each woman is different. Our bodies respond to things very differently. So although weight gain is one of the main symptoms, one of the main annoying symptoms, everyone doesn't have that. So I would still make sure that you're eating enough protein, those healthy fats, and then making sure you're eating that fiber. Let me know if that helped. Okay. Elise said increase your calories when it's time to break your fast. Because again, perimenopause is a transitional stage. So if you're not eating enough, that can cause inflammation. So you just want to make sure that you're supporting your body as much as you can. So if you're able to manage with intermittent fasting, make sure that you're providing your body with the nutrients it needs because perimenopause is a physiologically stressful time for the body, regardless of if you're gaining weight or not. I hope that helps. Okay, and yeah, Vanessa said calculate your macros. Let's see. Jessica says I really struggle with getting your protein intake. I feel you 100%. So, again, with protein, we have to tweak it and test. I struggle with eating enough because once I'm full, I'm like good. So what I do is I try to cram as much protein into the meals I do eat. So my coffee, I have a I don't know if I'm in Texas. We have HEBs and there is a milk by HEB. It's Mootopia brand and it has protein. I think it has 13 grams of protein and now I've actually started adding additional protein to it. Now I add cottage cheese to everything. When it's cooked, that nasty texture is gone. So I add that in everything. So because I get full easily and I may not be hungry, I just cram as much protein into the meals, the 3 meals, and especially when I snack, I cram as much protein in there. I hope that's helpful. So Cindy Brown said, she's been researching virtual platforms, and her friend told her about Jayla Health. It's Black female owned, and they offer an easy home hormone test and a virtual consult with a perimenopause expert. I recently ordered my kit. It tracks FSH over 2 weeks. Hopefully, this is helpful. I love that it was founded by someone like me. Yes, all I would say about all of these virtual perimenopause advisors is again, it's always important to make sure that you have a dedicated healthcare provider just in case something goes wrong. I've heard some horror stories, but some people have had great results. So again, as long as you're making sure you're staying in contact with your actual healthcare provider or someone that knows your entire health history, not someone that's just giving you a medication, I would say to, again, just make sure you have someone that's dedicated. So if something happens, you need to call someone during the weekend because you're having a horrible side effect, that you have someone to do that. So I can't knock the virtual people, but I always, if I had decided to go virtual, which I prefer to do things in person, I would make sure that you have, like, again, if you have a side effect, someone who knows your history, someone who can, or someone who can help decrease a dosage of something, just someone for emergencies like that, because people do have side effects to the medications, especially when they're in the testing phase where they're raising it and lowering it. I hope that helps. Okay. So abdominal fat is the most harmful because it's inflammatory. And they've done studies and studies and studies, Isabella. It is just known to be more inflammatory than fat that is anywhere else. Yolanda said this was very informative. I'm glad it was. I was hoping it was. I know a lot of these things I didn't know, and I was talking to some women this past week, and they were like, "No, I didn't know that." So I was like, "Let me throw that in there." Cindy said this was amazing. I learned so much. Lorzell said, "Thank you for this. This is really good information. Thanks for sharing." Okay. Catherine said, "Thank you so much. Have a good night." Uh, Jessica Solin said she learned how estrogen can affect cholesterol levels and now wants to get a blood test of her hormone levels so she can have a better understanding of her body. Okay, Yolanda said for health and autoimmune disease, yes. So, um, it's very tricky. Again, if you have like pre-existing or other underlying conditions, perimenopause is tricky because it can make it worse. And some women actually develop autoimmune diseases during perimenopause because estrogen has another integral role in our immune health and function. Like I think Rati was mentioning, like smells were intense. These are all things, and these are all ways that estrogen affects other systems other than the heart. Marquis says, "Thank you so much for the useful information tonight." Asbest says, "Thank you." And KB says, "Also, is there a time that one stops taking estrogen or HRT if you're post-menopause?" So I think that's something that's individual to each woman, and you would talk to your healthcare provider. So whoever's prescribing the hormone replacement therapy and monitoring your overall health, that's something that is an individual discussion you would have with them because again, it's different for every woman. I hope that helps. Okay. Okay, so KB says her blood test showed that she's past menopause because her FSH levels are very high. Is it time to take out her IUD? So again, with this, I can't tell you that because this is something that you have to discuss with your healthcare provider. Again, they put you on it and hopefully they've been monitoring your time on the IUD and monitoring how it's affecting you. So you would have to talk with them. I'd have no idea of your medical history and I can't make a decision just by reading what you've written. I would say go to whoever it's, whether it's your OBGYN or your gynecologist, whoever, and talk to them about this because this is a very specific question. So I say I would talk with them because they would know, especially since you have a history of another condition. Does that make sense, KB? Okay, so you mentioned statins, nervous about heart health. So the best time to take magnesium, depending on what type it is at night. So if you have anxiety during the day, you can take magnesium glycinate. It's magnesium or magnesium biglycinate. That helps with anxiety and that can help with anxiety throughout the entire day. And there are like 10 or 12 different types of magnesium. Most of the time, I'll tell people to take it at night, like magnesium citrate. It can help with sleep. And again, there's all sorts of other different magnesiums. But if, let's say, you have anxiety in the morning, the glycinate is not what it'll do is it'll just stabilize your neurotransmitters. It's not going to make you sleep, if that makes sense. But the glycinate and biglycinate is important for people who have anxiety. But KB, if you're interested in finding like nutritional and lifestyle ways to kind of address the sugar addiction, you should go ahead and sign up for a call. At least you'll get a blueprint. But for the other questions, those are things you have to address with your healthcare provider. Okay, let me see. Okay. And the statins, if you have any concerns about any medications or if you start to have any side effects, definitely talk with your pharmacist or the doctor that puts you on the medication. And so what I would say is to track, track, track. If you start feeling weird or you start having weird side effects, you should always read the side effects and know what they are. But if you start having any of those side effects or the rare side effects, Definitely talk with your healthcare provider and definitely your pharmacist. Okay. Yes, yes. Yes, Vanessa. That's why I was mentioning I can help her create a little plan with in regards to the nutrition and sugar. Okay. Okay, so Yolanda or anyone who's interested, you can go ahead and you can sign up for the blueprint call. Again, it's a two-part call. The first call, I ask you about your life, what's going on, what areas you want to focus on. And then after that, I get all your answers. I put them into a little blueprint, a little personalized blueprint to you, your life, your lifestyle. And then there's a second call where I give you and I present your blueprint to you. And if you're interested in anything, any like coaching or anything like that, that can be discussed, but it's low pressure and you leave with that blueprint. Do you need me to put the link in the bio? Not in the bio, but do you want to put the link again, or did you all get the link? Mm, Okay, give me a second. Should still be here. Okay. If you're not able to make any of the times where the my calendar is free, you can just send me an email and I can work something out for you. So let me put the email here. Okay. So if none of the times work for you, you can go ahead and just send an email and then I'll have my assistant check my calendar and then go from there. So I thank you all for sitting in for this presentation when you could have been doing something else with your evening. I'm just glad to be able to share these things because these are things I did not know. And again, perimenopause lasts a while. And so we want to make sure that we take care of our health and our bodies so we can be here for our families and, here to do what we were placed here to do. So that's it for tonight. If none of y'all have any questions, that's it. And yeah, so y'all take care and y'all have a great afternoon or night. Bye.